and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Point 6. Point 6 merino wool socks and base layers are built with performance in mind. Merino wool is a great natural fiber that controls moisture, temperature, and friction to keep you comfortable, and I have been wearing their socks every day at work for years now. Their socks are made in the U.S. and have a lifetime guarantee, so go buy the last pair of socks you will ever need at point6.com.
This is Jim with a quick talk about getting outside. I was on a 10-mile hike today, which I'm pretty proud of. Went pretty well, and I've been looking forward to that hike for about a month. I was away on a work trip, and the way I entertain myself and kind of escape on those work trips is by watching YouTube videos about backpacking. Channels like Homemade Wanderlust and the Coal Cracker Bushcraft channel. I watch those videos, and I kind of plot out hikes and trips I want to do. That's kind of my escape when I'm overseas. And I love it. It's my anti-drug, if you will. And if you subscribe to the podcast, you probably already consider yourself pretty outdoorsy. In fact, you might be very outdoorsy, maybe more so than I am. But I would challenge you to think about how often you actually get out. If you're anything like me, you probably have a ton of commitments. You have a job, maybe 2 jobs, family, podcasting, a very important commitment, and the recreational stuff often ends up on the back burner. But I want to remind you that an awful lot of that recreational stuff is, in a very real way, self-care. That's a tricky term, and very much not my style, right? Self-care sounds foofy. And also, I'm not claiming that a hike is like replacement for therapy, right? Mental health is mental health, but we know it can help your mood some to get moving and to get outside. And it doesn't even really matter what the activity is. Hiking, running, fishing, hunting, mountain biking, lawn bowling, doesn't really matter. Anything that gets your body moving and gets you some sunlight helps. I would also offer that people need movement and they need stillness. In the 21st century, our brains are always going, right? The last time I set down my phone before I try to go to sleep after staring at a bright phone is usually very late at night. And it's usually the very first thing I look at when I get up in the morning. And sometimes we might be on the go, as in we're being transported in a car or a plane, but even then our bodies tend to be sedentary. That's kind of backwards, right? Think about how much time you spend at a desk or in a car or in a meeting room. How much of that time is your brain racing? You're talking to people, you're responding to emails, you're planning, you're coordinating, you're conducting mission activities, but often from a desk, and your body is sitting. So your brain is racing, your body is sitting. And even when you go to the gym, which is good, you should go to the gym, you probably aren't doing as much full body moving, right? Because you're working specific muscle groups and specific movements. And you're probably not interfacing with nature as much as you should or could be. Now, I'm not a physiologist or a psychologist, but I can tell you that's not good. You need to get moving. You need to get some activities. Let your brain calm down a little bit. And that's tough, especially with the types of personalities that end up in law enforcement and military and the types of people who are drawn to concealed carry. We tend to be the higher strung, higher activity, go-getter type people. And that's one of the things that makes us great. It's also one of the things that kills us early, right? Some things to think about with this is people need a challenge. I recently read a book called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. It's popular, I think, in the Go Ruck movement. And I'm not super big into the Go Ruck enterprise, but I do occasionally throw on a heavy backpack and walk around with it. And through that, I came across this book, Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And one of the things he talks about is people need a challenge. They need a strenuous activity. They need a goal, some uncertainty about whether that goal is even achievable, and at least a little bit of risk. That, you know, in his thesis is you're hardwired for that. You need that in order to feel fulfilled and in order to feel like a man or a woman or, a human in the modern age, right? And it's tough because so much of what we do in the modern age doesn't involve any of that. So check out the book. I recommend it. He explains well also that people kind of need to be bored. They need that time. That's how a lot of our creativity happens, is from sitting there bored. That's how we come up with the cool inventions, right? And we need to be alone sometimes, and we need to be challenged. And we're not getting that. And when we're getting it, we're usually getting it at like a 15 out of 10 instead of like an 8 or 9 out of 10. And I offer, in terms of getting outside, one of the things that stops people, one of the funnier things that stops people is the idea that it has to be perfect. Well, you don't have to summit Denali or Kilimanjaro. You have to get out of your house. Go for a jog around the block. One of my favorite sayings is, bad breath is better than no breath. Just get out. And one of the things you're going to find is the more often you get out, those little excursions make the bigger excursions more doable, right? It's not so insurmountable to go do a big hike, to go literally take the trip to Denali or even Kilimanjaro. One of our guests on the podcast, MJ the Marine, is working on doing a honeymoon there, which I think is really cool. So you can get there, but it starts by getting your ass out the door, putting on some hiking boots and walking around the block, or walking on a nature trail, or walking up the local hill, or walking up the local mountain, right? And I tend to do hiking, so I'll often kind of put this in like a hiking context, but I don't care what you do. Running, bicycle riding, like I said, lawn bowling, I don't care. Even golfing. And I recently had a month-long argument about whether golf is a sport. It's not, but what it is something that moves your body and gets you outside. I recommend don't take the golf cart, like walk with your clubs if you can, but if that's what gets you out there, do it, right? But if you do go for a hike, think about testing out some piece of your survival planning gear. Let's nerd this up, okay? Make an actual fire in an approved area and when the fire danger is not too high or whatever, but do, like, if part of your survival is that you can make fire, that's cool. Test it out. Make sure you can make a fire in your environment with your stuff, right? Set up a shelter. Whatever it is you've got. If you walk around with a tent all day long, set up the tent. If you keep one in your car, for example, set it up. If you have a Mylar emergency blanket and some 550 cord, try to set up a shelter that way. Hike sometime with whatever zombie go bag you keep in your car. Just see how it works out for you. If it weighs 55 pounds, learning will occur. If you have a case of MREs from like back in Bosnia, and that's your whole survival plan is those MREs, take one out with you on the hike and try it out. Tell us how it works in the comments. I can't wait to hear about it. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not saying you have to go all Ranger Ricky every time you go hiking, but think about this. Like, when you go, take one piece of your plan and just test it out. Take it into the operational environment and see how it works. And like I said, you don't have to go all ninja. Do one thing. If your one thing is a ferro rod, like the spark fire starter thing, that's great. Take it out and see how much scraping it takes to get the fire going. Depending on where you live, it might catch instantly, or it might take 3 hours. That's worth knowing, right? When you get outside, whatever the activity is, put your phone in airplane mode. Don't look at your clock. Today on my hike, I had I have one of them fancy Garmin watches. I had it set up so there was no clock on the clock face. It was just showing me my distance and my time on the hike. And I found that honestly like soothing, that I didn't have to stare at the clock the whole time. Because as soon as I have a clock to look at, that's what I'm going to look at, right? And as much as I want you to listen to our podcast, unless it's an activity you do all the time and you're good with secondary activities, I suggest not listening to something, like not even music. Just get out, have some silence. And there are some people, especially some people I work with, who absolutely cannot stand that. And I would say those people especially need a little bit, right? And I don't know what mindfulness is. Again, that's probably too foofy for me. But I know it usually takes me about an hour of being outside, doing a hike or doing a ruck or whatever, or a run. It takes me about an hour to get into the zone of whatever it is I'm doing and start flowing, like mentally and even a little bit physically, in order to like get in the groove. It takes about an hour to like disconnect and get into whatever it is I'm actually doing, to live in that moment. And you don't have to think of nothingness. Like we're not doing the Buddhist meditation thing. You can even think about the things that are bugging you. Honestly, the things that are bugging you at work or at home. And one of the neat things about doing this outdoor stuff is you might think about them differently if you think about them in this activity bubble. So it's okay to think. It's okay to not think. What's not okay is to distract yourself with noise, literal noise, whether it's, like I said, music, podcasts, secondary activity stuff. Don't have some silence. Be alone with your thoughts. And my personal experience with that is I'm often a lot more creative, and I feel like I get better at solving those problems, whatever problems that I'm working through, right? When you get out, you'll tend to notice some things that maybe you've been missing. Nature, weather, bugs, maybe in a bad way, right? Like not all nature is your friend. Not all weather is your friend. It's okay to be hot. It's okay to be cold. It's okay to be wet, whatever, up to a point, right? Past some point, you need a jacket and you need to dress for the weather. You need to hydrate, bring some drip drop, but being uncomfortable is okay. And you might do some learning in that regard, right? Learning how to read the weather a little bit, right? You'll notice some other things too that maybe you need to as a human, right? Stuff like seasons, things like what's going on with the climate. You know, streams that used to flow, but they're now seasonal streams that are now dry, animals that used to be around that are gone, invasive animals that never used to be around that are suddenly there. I'm not saying you have to jump on the Al Gore electric car bandwagon. I don't care about that. But you will tend to notice that stuff more, and maybe that's important. You'll also notice people out in that environment, depending on where you go, right? When I go hike, I'm specifically trying to get away from people. I'm trying to find the most desolate place I can, wherever I am. But you'll notice those people, whatever people you come across, and you'll notice things about them for better and for worse. And I think, especially if you're a cop, it might be a good idea to walk or jog or hike outside somewhere in your area of responsibility while you're off duty. And you might be surprised what stands out at 3 to 5 miles an hour that doesn't stand out at 40 to 70 miles an hour. Right? You might catch more. You might notice more. And I think there is value there. Now, even just out of the tactical stuff, I think there's goodness to be had from noticing the things around you, noticing the stars, noticing the wind. And you don't have to go all like Vanessa Williams' Colors of the Wind, but you do have to like notice that the world's like, kind of a cool place and get your head in the right space. And I think that's part of it, right? Speaking of getting your head in the right space, think about doing the good human checklist while you're out. Pick up some trash. There's plenty of it all over the damn place. Pick up some trash. Take a trash bag with you. Get some good karma points while you're out. In fact, think about volunteering. Once you get out and you get comfortable getting out, try to get some teens outside. They need it. They really need it, right? Programs like the Scouts, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever they're calling themselves these days, Human Scouts, Civil Air Patrol, the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, whoever, they desperately need good, responsible adult mentors. And that's probably you or someone like you. I don't know what your teen years were like, but I remember feeling everything more. I couldn't moderate my moods and my emotions because I was a teenager. I was walking, testosterone and all the other hormones. But I found personally that running and hiking helped me channel that a little bit. And especially like being out with the bros, being out with Mike out in Mount Baldy, and John and Shane. running with Johnny up in the foothills. Like, those were formative experiences for me. And I have tried my hardest to provide experiences like that for the next generation. That's how I met MJ the Marine. Was she was looking to get outside, and I helped her do some in-depth outdoor activities, right? So think about it. Think about, once you get out, introducing others to it. Bring your family out to it. Get your kids out if you have little kids. And I have little kids, so I think about this all the time. There are ways to do it and ways not to do it, right? If you've got little kids, make it fun. Bring snacks, bring water, bring all the snivel stuff for them. Don't make it the Baton Death March. Keep it short. You got to scale it to the kids, but do it. It is important. It's important for them, right? If you want them to grow up to be, hard chargers, they have to at some point be exposed to the world outside their living room in their mom's minivan, right? This is your chance. Go do it. As for the volunteer programs, like I said, the scouting and the Civil Air Patrol and Big Brothers Big Sisters, all the other ones, those programs are only as good as the people who show up. A lot of the volunteers are great, but I would think that you probably have something to offer. So think about it. Speaking of the hiking stuff, I was thinking about this today on the hike. I need to give a shout out, like a legit shout out to Point 6 Merino Wool. They're one of our sponsors, but this piece of this discussion is straight from me, right? I really do love them. I wore them today on the 10-mile hike. They worked great. I wear them to work. I was personally skeptical. When Mike told me we got a wool company as a sponsor, I was like, ugh. My sensitive pilot skin has always been irritated by wool army blankets, right? My feet sweat, and I always work in hot, sweaty places, right? CENTCOM AOR is kind of my bailiwick. So I told him the last thing I needed was wool socks. And he's like, Jim, just try them out. And now I've worn them in Iraq and Syria, Africa, and all over the world, frankly. And I honestly go out of my way to wear them. I wear them on hikes. I wear them on rucks. I wear them in hot weather, cold weather. My wife likes them. She's asked me to go get some for her. So I think they're worth checking out. Like, for real, they're worth checking out. So I think that's all I got. Hopefully this inspired you to carve out some time just for you to go do something you love. And hopefully somewhere along the way, you'll have some adventure and learn some lessons and get some blisters and a sunburn. It won't kill you. And once you do that a little bit, maybe you can take some other people with you and it will help them too. That's all I got. Cheers.